The Big Mountain has another PAC update.
The Pac-12 is always in the news, so we're back on the Big Mountain to keep you updated.
Hey, welcome back to the Mountain. I am JY. This is my good friend Steve. And Steve, I just mentioned to you I like to try and do a PAC update at least every other week. You know, we started off with really diving into the PAC. I know we've got a lot of Beavers and Cougars fans, and we got to make sure we're giving them some love here. So I've got three things I want to talk about.
Awesome.
The first one is further information on the settlement agreement.
Okay.
Had a little bit of, saw some communication with MacMichael, who was the lead attorney or an attorney with the Beavs and Cougs through that whole PAC debacle. I want to talk a little bit about the network deal, maybe with the CW. We'll see. Mm-hmm. And the last one is just more rumors from Wilner and Canzano. I know I threw shade at Canzano a few weeks ago. I may do it again.
Before we get started, I just want to say, our West Coast football fans, some of them are PAC fans, some of them are Mountain West fans.
Yeah.
Some are a little both. There's a lot of overlap. They're some of my favorite viewers to interact with in the comments and all of that because they appreciate it. They're not spoiled by, like, down in the Southeast, they got all this football, whatever, and all this success. The West Coast football fans, they're realistic. They have, for the most part, realistic expectations. Yes. They just love football, and they're smart. They're great to interact with. So I'm glad we're doing another PAC episode.
Totally agree. I always enjoy these episodes. I enjoy the conversations we have. I enjoy the communications with our viewers that we have. And just as a reminder, we're doing live episodes every Wednesday night. Going to do another one this Wednesday. I always try to throw some good PAC stuff in there. And maybe this Wednesday we'll have conclusion on the CW. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But the first thing I want to talk about here is Eric MacMichael. Again, he represented the Beavs and the Cougs in their lawsuit against the Treasonous 10, Steve.
Treasonous 10.
And he had a recent discussion with Wilner. I read some of that article, pulled out some things I thought were really interesting, and he focused on a piece that you and I have talked about almost from the beginning that doesn't get a lot of play in headlines. That is the whole liabilities of the PAC and the protection that is needed for these two schools moving forward. And that was the main focus of this article, which is why I really, really enjoyed it here. So a quote from him here was, "We were very mindful of the liabilities facing the conference and making sure the liabilities were addressed as a guiding principle in the approach to a fair settlement." Specifically, the House versus the NCAA case was one of the big drivers here. So I want to talk about that real briefly for those that may not know what that was. But he described this as an existential threat to the NCAA. This lawsuit was filed back in 2020 by a former ASU swimmer, Grant House, and this antitrust lawsuit aims to compensate thousands of former athletes for their name, image, and likeness over a multi-year stretch pre-2021. The plaintiffs sought $1.4 billion in damages from the ACC and its universities. But since then, that amount has grown significantly because this has now become a class action lawsuit, which was granted by a U.S. district judge in November. To be clear, this is a lawsuit against the NCAA and the P5 conferences, of which the PAC obviously is one at that time. There's speculation that the total judgment could exceed $4 billion here, Steve. Many believe that this will get settled prior to actually going to trial. So what does this actually mean for the PAC-2 schools moving forward? Certainly, they couldn't take sole responsibility for the entire 12-team share that's in this lawsuit of what the PAC used to be when this lawsuit came up. MacMichael says this case was front and center at the settlement and needed to be addressed. As we discussed in our last episode, the departing 10 will have $65 million withheld from their 23-24 distributions. But the liability here for the PAC could be much, much, much higher than that. So the PAC settlement agreement includes language that protects the Beavs and the Cougs moving forward. Most of that language here has been redacted. We can't see what that is. However, there is a section that details out this. It's almost 4 pages long. And given MacMichael's statements that I mentioned earlier, it's clear that the PAC has covered their bases with this. I'm sure there's going to be, in that redaction, there's some sort of shared, equal, I would assume, equal distribution to the 12 members at the time. So I found that really, again, very interesting. I really like to hear what MacMichael had to say. What do you think about this first one, Steve?
So I just want to pop in the time machine and go back to some of our very first episodes we did about the PAC and as it was falling apart. And everybody, all the talking heads out there were focused back then on the revenue.
Yep.
How's the revenue going to get split up? There were all these other fans of other PAC schools that were being impatient.
Yep.
And they're like, just let us out the door. Give us our cut. Let's just dissolve the whole thing. Everybody takes an equal cut and we can walk away. And you and I were on it from the beginning. It's not just about splitting up the revenue.
Yes.
It's about what are we going to do with those liabilities. And we laid out a couple different liabilities, but this was the big one.
Yes.
Is all of these lawsuits, all of this litigation that's hanging out there, possible back pay for years to athletes. So I have to say, I feel a little vindicated because we were, from the very beginning, when no one was talking about these liabilities, we were saying that. And then also when we got deeper into the potential of the Mountain West wanting to basically either take on Oregon State and Washington State or merging into the PAC or whatever, and we said basically that, well, the Mountain West might be kind of keeping their distance because they want the PAC, the remaining, to figure out what they're doing with these liabilities before they get involved. It's like before you marry someone who got divorced, you want to make sure they get their first divorce settlement done. But so you know what you're taking on. So all of this is coming back to roost, and it sounds like they have this settlement that's agreeable to all.
Yes.
So there's certainty now, which I think, and you and I have said from the beginning, that is a huge step into whatever comes next, is to figure out these liabilities. Yes, the first fight was about control, and then it was about, okay, let's splitting up the revenue. This is the final piece, which to me might be the most important piece, is what are the liabilities going forward?
It is the most important piece because, I just talked about one, and MacMichael was focused on this one because, again, $4 billion. I mean, this is a massive loss, potentially massive settlement. I mean, I think everybody thinks it's going to get to a settlement. So there's going to be some sort of a liability for all the P members here in every P conference. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be huge. There needed to be protection there. And you're right. Everybody was focused on, there's so much revenue and all these assets that they have. And, you look now, and we said it at the time, yeah, the assets are great, but the assets are only as good as you use them to produce revenue. I mean, if the Pac-12 network isn't going to be used for much,
it could be more of a liability.
It's going to become a liability. We've talked about that. Now, they've addressed that in the short term and how they're going to be using that. And we're going to get to that here in a minute, too, with the potentially media agreement. But yeah, the liabilities are the biggest thing, not only for the Beavs and the Cougs to know what risk they have, but exactly for anyone, any member, whether that's a merger with the Mountain West or them trying to move on to bring any school into the PAC. Who the heck's going to join a PAC when they have potential massive liabilities outstanding there? I kind of wonder, that brings up a question to me is, so they're redacted from the public. I wonder how much can the PAC-2 discuss these with any member that wants to come in,
so they know what they're getting into.
So they know what they're getting into. I mean, do you take the word of the Beavs and the Cougs that we've got it under an agreement? Can they show the agreement? Because I'll use San Diego State because everybody knows San Diego State wants to get out. They've been wanting to get out of the Mountain West. Maybe not anymore, but they have for a while. So if they go to San Diego State and San Diego State, I need to see that agreement. I need to see what if we join this entity, what. From day one, what's our risk here in terms of past liabilities? So, and there's plenty of liabilities. If they have 4 pages of redactions, yes, the House is the biggest, but we talked about that too. There's several, I think 4, 5, 6 different cases that the PAC is a part of that isn't going to be $4 billion each. But there's some significant liabilities out there for the PAC.
Yeah, and when you look at it, and it's smart that it's redacted, a lot of the stuff is redacted, because there's kind of a competition for survival going on.
Oh, yeah.
You have the Big 12 who could look to expand. You have the ACC who already poached, well, I won't say poached, but they picked up Cal and Stanford. Yeah. And you have the Mountain West who's potentially looking to grow or combine or something like that. So it makes sense for the PAC to, first of all, get a settlement on these liabilities, but they don't, like you said, other potential members are going to want to know what's going on, but at the same time, they don't want their competitors, the Big 12, the ACC, to be able to use this against them. Well, the PAC's got this hanging over their head. So, but as far as a kind of a positive spin on this, I've said from the beginning that I really thought the PAC, they were building a bridge. Yeah. It was at least going to have to be 1 year, but possibly 2 years. And I know a lot of fans have been, they want things to move faster. Okay, we want to know what's going to happen. We don't want to know where we're going to be, what we're going to look like. The remaining PAC-2 fans, they want some movement. They want to know what's going on. Mountain West fans, they want to know what's going on. Hey, are you guys joining with us? Are we joining with you? Or should we just forget about you?
Right. Yeah.
But so much of these things, and especially this liability piece, was a really important part of that bridge. Mm-hmm. They needed to take care of it. They got that revenue to build the bridge, and this is kind of an important checkpoint along the way.
Right. Absolutely. Well, and we're going to get to that kind of at the end here in terms of how they're going to move forward. But I first want to talk about the media rights upcoming for this next year. They don't have any. And there's a lot of rumors out there right now, headlines that, they're very involved with the CW. Apparently it's close, although that was a few weeks ago now, that it's like, it's coming, it's imminent, and it hasn't been done yet. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but, sometimes those things can take time. But the CW was a network that had a lot of interest in the entire PAC about a year ago. Yep. If you Google CW and PAC, most of what you get is from, April of 23, which was... they were kind of getting into discussions about what that looked like. And that those rumors back then had many asking that if things are that bad in terms of the media rights environment, the media rights negotiations for the PAC, that potentially they have to stoop to the CW level to get it to the media rights. It was a bad look for the conference at the time. Who knows how close they were to that? We certainly know the pitch, and we thought there was going to be an agreement on an Apple contract a night before, and then the morning after, we learned that people are like, yeah, we're out. We're not even agreeing on that because we're out of here. But, there was rumors that this was a bit of a bad look, that they were stooping to the CW level. So... Now, as we sit here, we're taping this on Sunday. We'll get this one out in a few days. But again, there hasn't been a finalized agreement yet. However, we have said many times that the PAC-2 is prioritizing exposure over maximizing their revenues. You're hearing them say that again. We've said that for months now. They came out very early and said exposure is important to us, which to me, Steve, means that they don't want to be forgotten about. Yes. Like they want to have their exposure out there all the time, so that people are like, oh yeah, they are still playing football. And in my opinion, it's that was a bit harsh. I mean, everybody knows they're still playing football. Yeah. But it's to again try to get that P4 invite. I think exposure. Get people to watch us on whatever network it is, and we're still looking for that P4 invite. That's my opinion on it.
Yeah, I think that's part of it, and I'll say to add on to that, they want to keep themselves in the public discussion until we finally figure out what the landscape is going to look like in a year or two. Yeah. Is there really a P4 anymore? Mm-hmm. Whatever. And I will say, both of you and I, we have Comcast. When you look on that TV guide, which is real important, you bring up the guide. The CW is right there with ABC and CBS, so they can see that. Oregon State Beavers, Washington State Cougars, right there. Those football games on the guide, up and down, right from
100%. That's where it's at. At least for us, that's where it's at.
So and potentially, I think a lot of the former PAC members were worried about that streaming package. Like, we're just on Apple TV. People will forget about us. Right. This is something where they can be on your guide in between some of those other premier networks.
For sure. So they have a combined 13 home games between these two schools for this fall that they can bundle together to try and get the best deal that they can. It's understood that the games will be produced, from what I saw, by the PAC-12 network and then aired or broadcast by this broadcast partner, media rights partner.
Can I say something about Pac-12 Network real quick that I said last year? Last year was the first time I saw a couple games on Pac-12 Network. It was the first time, I think maybe one of the Colorado games and another game, a USC game.
Okay.
And I was impressed. They did a fantastic job. I loved they had the on-field crew there, with a desk and everyone set up. I thought a great production value. I liked the personalities that were on there. They were smart. They were engaging. So I was a little worried about what was going to happen with the Pac-12. This sounds like they can keep that going, keep those people employed, hopefully, and have it aired on the CW. So that's a cool idea in my opinion.
Yeah. So while the CW only recently actually started to increase their whole sports programming on that channel, back maybe 10 years ago, it was like, what was it, like Sabrina the Teenage Witch or something was on there. I don't know,
but the Flash and Green Lantern and Superboy
but they're trying to get obviously into sports here, especially over the last couple of years. They're really starting to invest. They have agreements with the ACC, with NASCAR, with the WWE. For those of you that consider that sports, it is. I mean, they're working their butts off. Sports entertainment, yes. And is it Live Golf? LIV? Whatever that is.
Yeah, Live, I think.
Yeah, Live. So they've got some stuff going on here with the CW.
And some people made a joke of the ACC games being on the CW last year. I watched a couple of those as well, and again, I think it was the production value was good. Here's the thing: ESPN is known as we're the big bad leader in worldwide sports.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, you watch some ESPN games, and they can be a little rough if it's not the premier game. The people they have on there, and sometimes I don't even think that the announcers are even in the stadium with the team, like they're watching on a webcam or something. It can be a little rough, and I was impressed with the ACC games that I saw on the CW last year.
I totally agree. And I know this because I watched the Mountain West on the FX1 and on CBS-SN, and I really appreciate most, not all, but most of their on-air talent.
Yes.
And I agree with you. When you get the non-premier games on ESPN, I wonder what the heck they're doing sometimes. What do you
They got
watching?
like one camera that's like
Well, and even the announcers, I think maybe they usually are calling curling or something because they don't know what the heck.
Yeah.
Anyway, so last thing, and it's something that you mentioned. So the CW is carried on 203 stations across the country, which basically means it's like 100% of U.S. households.
Yep.
It's almost on 100% of U.S. households. So, I mean, again, if you're looking at trying to make sure you're getting exposure, you don't get much better than 100%, do you, Steve? I mean, math tells me 100% is max.
I totally agree, and I'll say yet again, I think the decision makers, whoever's making these decisions, whether it's Schultz, whether it's the new commissioner, whoever, I really think they're doing a good job of keeping their schools in the conversation, making the best moves for them to prepare those schools, because we're never going to get back what we had before.
Correct.
It's never going to be the Conference of Champions and all that stuff, but what does the future look like, and how can we position these two schools to survive all their sports and survive and thrive as best as possible? I think the decision, I mean, this isn't a done deal yet, and we don't know what the financial terms are going to be, but honestly, I'm willing to bet, especially over the next 2 years, more important than the how much money can they get is what you said, keeping the exposure, keeping those two teams in the national conversation, and this might be a great way to do it.
And I saw a number put up. I'm not going to say it because to me it was ridiculous.
Okay.
I don't think it's realistic, so I'm not going to bring it up on our podcast until we know the facts.
All right.
So the last thing I want to talk about, Steve, and I'm going to go over this. I want to get your opinion first.
Okay.
Because everyone's going to know my opinion.
Okay.
So I want to. There's been two different takes here recently from really the two main reporters of the PAC, Wilner and Canzano, as I said early on. As our viewers know, I've thrown some shade at Canzano here more recently, and it appears that he's saying, and he has said here recently, I think just last week, that time is of the essence, and the PAC expansion is going to be coming sooner than we think. And I don't think it's him guessing. I think he truly actually thinks or has heard that this whole PAC expansion is coming sooner than we think. He says this is because the ambiguity and not knowing the path forward is crushing recruiting and retention. He concludes that any path is better than not having one right now. On the flip side of that, Wilner says that he doubts we're going to see any expansion this year. The Pac-12 is going to wait to see where the ACC chips fall before doing anything. That likely won't happen until fall, winter. We don't really know. So even whenever it happens, it happens. But Wilner's saying, again, a little bit, he doesn't use the word bridge, but they have a bridge right now. There's no rush. They've got their schedule, and they want to wait and see what happens with the ACC and maybe some other things before they move forward here, Steve. I don't think our viewers probably need to know which side we're going to be on, but I'm going to throw it to you first. What do you think about Canzano's? Things are going to happen sooner than you think, and in his mind, need to happen, I think, sooner than you think. Or the Wilner, they've got some time.
So first of all, I'm going to talk about the two individuals first, okay? Wilner, to me, I view him as a journalist, okay? I think he's out there. I think he's reporting. He's trying to have some, journalistic ethics and act like a journalist, okay? And so in general, I think he does a real good job. I follow him. I don't... if he says something, I don't take it for gospel, especially if it's just his opinion.
Yeah.
But I think he does his diligence on being a journalist and bringing people just news and information. Canzano, I don't want to disparage the person. I think he's fun. I think he's entertaining. Like he keeps that for those people that want the constant buzz. They want that hit of the buzz of the expansion stuff, the realignment, whatever. Mm-hmm. He's great. Go to his website, subscribe, whatever. But I think you just have to look at the two of them in a different lens.
Yeah.
And I know I do. So what I'll say is what Wilner is saying basically lines up with what I've thought the whole time.
Sure.
And I think it's a really smart strategy by the PAC is we're going to build ourselves a bridge. I know I repeat myself with that all the time, but I think it's a great metaphor of, there's so many changes that are happening in college football. What college football looked like 9 months ago is gonna be totally different than what it looks like 18 months from now. Mm-hmm. We don't know about, is there going to be a Power 2 breakaway? Is there going to be revenue sharing? What's going to happen in all these cases? Is the NCAA going to be able to exist?
Right.
Recruiting could be totally and completely changed. Everything could be completely changed, and I think the PAC has done what they're doing what they need to do to survive for the next couple of seasons until we get to that point where they can make those decisions. So my views line up with what Wilner's saying, and we've seen nothing that indicates that a move is imminent with the PAC. As far as I can tell, I think both the PAC and the Mountain West want to play out this year's scheduling, see how it goes. Yep. We haven't seen anything that looks like the Big 12 or the ACC are ready to invite those Pac-2 members. And in the scheduling agreement, the Mountain West put some protections in place so they don't get picked off, at least not right away. Gives them some time. So I really have a hard time believing that something is going to happen. I think the Pac-2 are going to wait at least a year, maybe 2 years, see the lay of the land. It just makes sense, and I just trust Wilner on that.
I agree with you, and I'm going to. We've said this before, and I'm sorry if we repeat ourselves, but I feel like I brought this up in terms of where these opinions are. The number one play right now, in my opinion, for the Pac-2 is to get a P4 invite. That's number one. It's not to rebuild the PAC. I think their number one is get a P4. What's easier, joining an existing conference that's going to have a higher media rights agreement, or rebuild a PAC that you don't even have a media rights agreement right now, and X, Y, and Z. Again, not throwing shade at them, but their number one priority for me over the next probably 18 to 24 months is to try and get a P4 invite. And does that come because the ACC loses members? Maybe it does. I don't know.
So can you clarify, when you say their number one priority, can you clarify, are you saying that that's their number one priority, what they want to do, or what you think they should do? I'm just curious.
I think that's... No, it's not what I think they should do. I think it's what they want to do. I think what they want to do is it gets back to the expansion, It gets back to the media rights deal and being seen, everywhere. And I just think their number one play right now is to get an invite. I think their number two play is potentially to rebuild a PAC.
Right.
But if that's the case, I would ask Canzano, where are these schools coming from? If it's imminent, or it's going to happen, not imminent, if it's going to happen sooner than we think, I would say, where are these schools coming from? because I don't think they're coming from, they may get a couple from the Mountain West right now, but there's no need to do that from the Mountain West right now.
Nope.
Because you've got the penalties on both sides. You've got these penalties out there. You've got an existing conference that's doing just fine. And as I said before, one of the top 2 G5 conferences with the American. Their revenues are strong, and everybody points to their media rights. I get it. Their media rights agreement is coming up here in another year or two, and it's not strong right now. I get that. But everything else about that conference is strong.
Yes.
And it just, I would love to say to Canzano, and he may have an answer. I would love to hear him. Where are they getting 8 or whatever more schools that they need? Where are you getting 10 more? Like, where is this happening sooner than we think? I have no idea where they're coming from.
No. Yeah, and I'll say I agree. I think that the P2, both schools, and they may be acting somewhat individually also as a group, but I think both of those schools, they want to kind of bide their time to see if they get that invite from another PAC or from another power conference, whether that could be in their mind. They probably still view the ACC or the Big 12 as a power conference. Yeah. I personally do not anymore.
Oh, they 100% do.
Yes.
So they do through the college football playoff.
That's true. Yes. They're still a P. Yes.
I know. I think our definitions of P is different. When you're talking college football playoffs, yes, they're still a P. I know what we've been saying, or what you've been saying in terms of a P2 is more that autonomous, that just a whole different level of revenue and all that kind of stuff. But in terms of the football playoffs, yes, there's 4.
Yeah.
So
and I agree with you that they're kind of holding out hope that they get an invite there. And so they have no motivation to move quickly at this point.
No.
I mean, everything that they've done, again, I'm not going to use the same word again, but everything they've done is to give themselves a couple of years time to see what the landscape is and to evaluate their options. Do they get a power conference invite? Can they rebuild the PAC? What are their TV numbers like playing against the Mountain West?
Absolutely.
What's the interest? Do they stay in the national conversation, in the buzz? If they were to see, let's say we've talked about a couple of the Mountain West teams, Boise and San Diego. Yeah. They were to get that G5 invite to a 12-team playoff, and that could be huge.
It is huge.
And they just want to they want to let things play out. In my opinion, all of their actions show that they want to let things play out and give themselves time. And there's nothing I have seen or heard that says that a move is imminent to rebuild the PAC.
I want to answer your other question.
Okay.
You wanted a clarity on if it was what I think or if it's what they think. What I think they should do, again, no surprise to our subscribers, is merge with, join with, whatever with the Mountain West. Yep. Expand upon that. We just did an episode about potential targets for a Mountain West expansion outside of the Beavs and the Cougs, and have the daggone premier Western Conference. That's what they should do. And personally, I think that's what's going to happen. But I think they want to give themselves time to get smart. A P invite. And why not?
Yes.
Why not? Yep. So anyway, I wanted to, again, subscribers, they've heard me say that plenty of time, but I'm going to beat that drum until it happens. Steve.
Totally agree with you, and I've said that all along that, I don't necessarily have a rooted interest, other than I want to see the Beavs and the Cougs continue to thrive and be successful. I love the fan base, I love the teams, so I don't necessarily have a rooted interest in the Mountain West or either one of those, but exactly what you said is what I've been saying all along is I think what's going to happen. It just makes sense to build that West Coast football conference. Mountain West, what's remaining of the PAC, maybe expand like we did in our episode. We talked about some expansion targets. And I think a lot of the Mountain West fans, when they looked at that, they looked at adding those teams right now to the current Mountain West. And maybe it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yes.
But if you combine the Mountain West with these two teams and maybe expand a couple other teams, you really can build a powerful conference that would be the premier college football, college sports conference in the western 2 time zones of the country.
Totally agree. We love our PAC-2. You've got a home here on the Big Mountain for forever, wherever you guys end up. So with that, hey, just as a reminder, we do live episodes again on Wednesdays. Would love to see you there. Make sure you give this one a like. Subscribe if you like our content. We'll see you next time on the Big Mountain.
I'm a Beaver believer and a Cougar chaser.